G'day and welcome back to the next big thing. And I'm very excited to introduce today's guest again from the United States. We can say from New York, if that's okay, very close to New York. An accomplished, acclaimed producer, arranger, composer, multi-genre producer, and has been a recording artist for a number of decades and has worked. Body of work includes having worked on more than 20 full-length albums, either for himself or for other artists. And his latest release is so exciting. I can't wait to get into this podcast. So please join me in welcoming Phil Kanakis. Phil, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. Actually, interestingly, my first foray with the Academy, as you know, it was actually last year. Interestingly, you might not know that, is that I released an album, and then my father said, "Why don't you put it in the Grammys?" I'm like, how does that even work? And so then I realized that I was an awarding member, but another awarding member very kindly from the US said, "I'm happy to submit on your behalf." So that's how I sort of got in and learned the whole meaning of the word FYC. But interestingly, one of the very first few messages that came to me on Facebook was from you.
Was it really?
Yes, I think you were on an album with Nita Perez.
Nita Perez, yes.
Yes, you were. So that was the one you were working on last year. Yes. And so that's how your name stuck in my mind. And I was like, oh, okay. Who's Phil Kanakis? So, and then of course this year we reconnected, with me having joined the Academy and things like that. So in my mind, I was like, oh, I've got to, meet him or talk to him. So I'm happy that this is happening.
Also, me too.
Excellent. Okay. All right. You've seen a few of the podcast episodes, and you know the flow and the tradition on the next big thing is to have the guests share two things about themselves. And one of them is fact, great artistic integrity. And the other is where they've got to sort of manufacture something that is untrue. A fib, a piece of fiction, an outlandish lie, however you see it. But this is a test of your poker skills, Phil. And you roll off those two statements to me, and I put my deductive skills to the test.
I've been thinking about this for a couple of days.
For a couple of days? Oh, that's preparation. Okay. All right. What have you got? I'm like really intrigued now.
So my first scenario that I have for you is I was going to get my hair cut, and I was over there, and this leather guy came in. Like he sews leather, like he makes things out of leather, comes in to get his haircut, and then in walked with him was one of the producers for the Pointer Sisters.
Okay.
And he came up to me and my partner Holly and said, "I'm looking for a singer. Do you sing?" And she was like, "Yeah, I sing." And he's like, "Okay, we'll come back down to my hotel room and we should talk because I think you might have a nice voice." So we did. And for the next 5 months, we went through boot camp and how to continuously write hit songs and how to recognize when one is or not, so that it isn't something that is just kind of like you've heard where you might have an idea for a song, but you don't know how it's going to come out. So he put us through boot camp to write hit songs for 6 months or 5 months.
Okay.
So that's my first
statement. Okay.
Statement. My second statement.
From haircut to hit songs. Okay. All right.
Haircut to hit songs.
Okay.
And he was wearing this is the second part of the question. So
Okay, second statement.
no, 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 no. I don't want to go there. Um, my second one is that I how can I phrase this? I moved from New York to LA because I met with a music director from Fox, and she said that she could have work for me, and I moved out here, out there, and she put me right to work, and I was in the studio right from the get-go, from day one, working with them at Fox.
God. Very interesting. The first statement is so interesting. And if it is fact, I'd like to know so much more. But second one, you're saying, okay, let me replay this. So first is you went for a haircut, and your wife was also there with you, and yeah, and your partner.
Mhm.
And in walks a producer who said, and then who asks you to record vocals. Was it you or your wife? And then and then you.
My wife sings,
Okay,
so he
right.
was
So she's the
looking
vocalist.
for a
Okay.
singer.
Yeah. And then you spend 6 months working with him, writing hit song after hit song after hit song, and learning and going through a boot camp to learn how to craft hit songs. Okay, that's one. Second is you moved from New York to LA for a musician who worked at Fox, and
Music supervisor
music supervisor
from
who worked at
Fox.
Fox, and you spent a considerable amount of time working in LA with this supervisor from Fox.
Yes.
Oh man. Okay, I don't know why I'm really attracted to this haircut to hit song story, and I think there's it sounds outlandish, to be honest, but truth is stranger than fiction. So I think that's fact.
It is.
It is fact.
I
When was this?
and
What year was this?
that was in 2001. That
Oh,
was in 2001 or 2002. But I did have a meeting with Fox, and
mm,
she did say that if I moved out to LA, she would have work for me.
mm.
But then the Twin Towers came down, and all the movie studios were shut down, and I never ended up working at that time for them.
Mm, mm. Understood.
So
So that is something that could have eventuated but didn't.
yeah,
And you use that very cleverly. Very nice. Well done. Well played. That's good. But I'm very curious. So they say that there is no formula for a hit song or a hit movie. If there was one, everyone would be doing it. And there's an element of an educated guess. So, but this producer obviously knew their stuff and put you through a boot camp to write hit songs that went on to become hits, I would guess. What did you learn? Can you share something? How do you make a hit song? Even I'd like to know.
he he saw my talent that I had with how I always wrote melodies.
Mm,
And what he did was he kicked my butt to always make how do I say this? He he would have such a high bar that I would always take my ideas that I had within the melodies, and I would have to like refine it. Like at first he would be like, all right, that repeats a little bit too much, or take that out.
mm,
But he he refined and refined and refined and refined and refined that aspect with me, and now I it's it's something that I can just innately do or spot.
So you
And
apply a lot of the learnings from that time.
yeah,
Wow.
it's it it was invaluable what we went through, but we didn't realize it at the time. We didn't realize what that impact was going to have within our writing. But looking back on it, it was really one of the most important opportunities that I had at that stage. And again, he was able to, at that point, refine the talent that I have, but he was able to really kick our butt so that we would always push ourselves to that next level and to that next level. And we did that within basically everything that we did. We would be objective to what we were hearing, and we would step back from it and listen to it and say, you know, if if this wasn't me, how would this land?
Yeah.
Or and when we did our first chant album together, myself and my wife, we it was based on some Buddhist chants, and it was in the Pali language.
Is
And
that
so
the monk album? Is that the one? What
yeah,
was it called again? The
In the Company of Monks.
In the Company of Monks. Yes, yeah.
So we were approached by our friend who happens to be a Buddhist monk, and he was like, I want you to take these chants and I want you to put them to some like Western style music. And we were like, okay, you've just been tasked by a Buddhist monk. And we're like, okay, this could be fun. And it's something that I didn't necessarily know too much about the Pali language, but I had written Sanskrit chants before.
Nice.
And so
wow. So you know Sanskrit?
I know some words, and I was able to put
pretty cool.
Like we were able to put like different chants to like Western style music. And so he he gave us some chants to do, and those particular chants needed to go into a certain, like they needed to be in a certain order, because it's just how those chants are usually done.
Sure.
So the first one was Namo Tassa, and then it was the second one was Tasarana, I believe. And so I didn't have any ideas for Namo Tassa. I didn't have any ideas for that. So we started with some of the other ones, and no, I'm sorry. We started no. So I have to remember in my memory. We started with the second one, which was Tisarana, and it was really pretty. Like it was really pretty. And then I had the idea for Namotasa, and it was dramatic. And and you know what? I think we did have some of the chants that were done, but Tasarana was something that was unique because the version that we had was really pretty, but after Namotasa, it was like falling off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the song after that was falling off a cliff.
Yeah, and it had to be in an order, as you said. Yeah, okay.
And we needed to do it in that order, but it was not at that same level within how that piece sucked you in. And so we scrapped everything that we did except for Namotasa, and we started it like we started the whole thing again.
Wow. Wow.
So that everything would have been on that level. And we did that with a few of our projects. There was one project we were almost finished with it, and then the last piece was incredibly pretty, and we were like, I don't know about this. And so we ended up redoing a lot of the ones before that because
Wow.
like sometimes when you get going, like it's like you take on that momentum over the life of that project, and then you yourself transform within that project. And then a lot of times when you go into it, like you're not quite there yet. So you have to go back and kind of bring yourself. So, but that is something that we did learn from this producer was to just be very objective within that and know when you have something that's good and you're done so you can be on to the next thing, but also be objective enough to where you're just like, I have to can this for right now and we have to do it over.
Yeah.
Because at the end, what you're putting out is like that's how you can kind of regenerate over and over something that is refined like that.
So interesting, so fascinating, so many lessons. And so 22 years later, you're here with your latest release, which I'd love to talk about. And it's called Aquarius Rising, which I've had the pleasure of listening to. 8 tracks, is that right? From what I remember. And whilst I loved all of them, one that I keep going back to is potentially the main one, I think, title track-ish, is Turn Up the Peace, Aquarius Rising. And tell us about this, the genesis of this album, why you named it that, and particularly this track, because I think there's a connection to something you did in the past. So tell us about that.
So I have a background in sound healing music.
Okay.
And so for most of my recording career, so to speak, I mostly did like mostly sound healing music that was released under my name. And I had always wanted to make an album that was dramatic and epic because I had all of these melodies, but I didn't really have a project that I was working on that they would fit. And so I was like, okay, this is the year that I'm going to do this.
Okay.
And so the concept of Aquarius Rising is everybody knows about, the Aquarian age and like, coming into your own, so to speak, and, goodness prevailing over darkness. So what this is, kind of on that personal level, like whenever you're trying to do something really important or why you're here on this planet, there's going to be things that come up that try to stop you, that try to prevent you so that you don't really fulfill on why you're here on this planet. And so you have a choice do I, stand up and say, this is me, or do you back down? Because
Mm,
ultimately,
mm,
you know, you're saying that to yourself. Am I going to be there for myself, or am I going to let myself off the hook?
mm,
And so within the Aquarius Rising is just having that transformation and stamping forth within that for you personally, but it's also outwardly with the world too, because if everybody is really in tune with that and in
mm,
integrity,
mm,
then we're going to see some changes in the world that are going to be positive,
mm,
because there's so much that's out of integrity
mm,
within this planet.
mm,
And it starts by, how am I going to be today, or how are you going to be today? And
mm,
then so it's there, it's just they're interconnected.
mm.
So what's on the inside is on the outside.
Yeah.
So it's really like breaking through
Mm,
whatever
mm,
that is stopping you inwardly, but also outwardly.
mm,
And that's
mm.
where that concept came forth.
That's
And
fascinating.
it fit the epicness that I wanted to go with
Yeah,
it.
yeah,
So that it was just epically beautiful. And I
yeah.
was coming from that aspect of, how would it feel, or
Yeah,
what sounds would I be hearing if it was just
yeah.
over, everything was pleasant? Like,
Mm,
what kind of sound would I be hearing? And
mm,
that's what I was going for within
mm,
this.
mm,
And
mm,
you mentioned something about the title track, and the title track is Turn Up the Piece.
mm,
Um, and what I did is Turn Up the Piece is it was originally written for piano and violin.
mm.
And back in 2011, my
11? Yeah.
partner and I put on I think it was 2011. I think yeah, I think it was January 2011. Um, I think time is just eluding me.
Time has flown, yes.
Um, so we had a multi-artist event. There were about 12 different artists there, featured artists there, and we had Marla Maples there. She came and she emceed the event and she performed. And we had Ayla Brown, who had just been on American Idol. She was there and performed. And I performed. We had a chorus there. We had a New York orchestra there, and full band there. And I had to be epic.
Of course.
And so what I wanted to do with Turn Up the Piece was, originally I was gonna just do a solo piano, and then one of the orchestra people over there was like, why don't you have Russell join in with you? And this was the afternoon before the concert. Like the
And
concert,
this was Carnegie Hall, or was this somewhere else?
this was Carnegie
This was
Hall.
Carnegie Hall. The ticket I saw. So
Yeah,
yeah.
this was Carnegie Hall. And so our rehearsal was maybe 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and the
Yeah.
performance was that night. And
Yeah.
he was like, you should do that with Russell. You should do that with him.
Yeah.
And he's he's getting nervous because we were doing our run through for the the show, and we hadn't practiced.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, here's the sheet music, but there's no way you're going to be able to count this because it changes meters and a lot of the song. So I was like, here's the music, but I need you to intuitively feel this
Mm,
piece,
mm.
because if you try to count it, you're not going to
Yeah.
be able to keep up. And so he he was starting to count it, and I was like, this isn't going to work. And I took back the music, and I was like, we're in the key of A minor. This is the riff that I'm doing with the piano, weave in and out. And we practiced together one time,
Yeah.
and then we performed it, and it was stunning. It was absolutely stunning. So he basically improvised on a piece that he'd never heard at Carnegie Hall.
Wow.
But it was really incredible. But I always wanted to do an epic version of it. And so what I did was I took the Turn Up the Piece concept with the song, and then I just started making it more of that epic sound with the other instruments that are in it.
It was so big, it was so epic, but I think you used the right phrasing. You said epically beautiful. And I don't think we can generally use that. I mean, there's a bit of a paradox in there, and but it's a beautiful paradox, I think. And that track, I think I messaged you as well, saying that it's it's got that bigness, it's got that epicness, but it's also got that softness, beauty. So it's kind of coming together. And I haven't seen that in many tracks, I must say. So good on you. And I really enjoyed that piece a lot. And even the name, I think, Turn Up the Piece. Usually Turn Up is something very, loud and, pumpy. And Piece is like opposite of that. So it's very interesting. I love that. Love the naming, the music. Good luck with it. I really hope it goes far and wide. So you're entering that under what category again?
Classical compendium.
Classical compendium. Right. Okay, fantastic.
They have a new thing within that category this year where it's a blend of classical within other styles, and I was like, that would be perfect for something like this.
Fantastic. Hey, on that note, and I believe only yesterday when I met another fellow Melburnian who is also connected with the Grammys, and I realized that there were all these categories and fields and things that moved. So I was like, oh, I didn't even know this. And, and where I'm going with this is you've been with the Academy, what, 9 years? 7 years?
Yes.
9 years.
9 years.
And, you would have seen so much change. So tell us your experience. I'm a brand new, voting member, right? And I'm still very excited about that. It's been, what, 2 months now. And finally got to submit my first song, my track under Global Performance. And I'm just enjoying this process. But you've been there, been there for 9 years. You would have seen so much change. So tell us some of the changes at the Academy, and also add, what is it like being at the Grammys? Paint us a picture of what it's like to be with the Academy and the Grammys.
I have not gone to the Grammys yet.
Right. Oh, okay.
That's going to change this year.
Yes.
I'm planning on going this year.
Yes.
But
nice.
But I haven't attended the actual Grammys during this time. I've been a voting member for 9 years. And I've seen a lot of changes within the categories, and we were lucky last year that what we submitted for didn't get changed, but the year before that we had submitted Nita's album in New Age, and it got moved to folk, and I didn't know that it was moved until the actual ballot came out. So
okay,
we had all of the correspondences that we were doing, and she was actually here visiting. And
so she's based where?
New Orleans area.
Okay.
And so she was here visiting, and I was like, I don't see this on the ballot. and then I sent a message to another of our mutual friends in the Academy, and I was like, do you see this? And she said it's in folk. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, all of the promoting that we've been doing the last month or so was for New Age, and then it was just more kind of going to kind of backtrack, but those are the things that are it happens, it just comes forth with it. But
Yeah.
I wouldn't trade my experience for the world. It's been
Yeah.
it's been such a pleasure just meeting so many people. It's like this time of year, everybody gets together, you hear what everybody is up to.
Sure.
And even though everybody is kind of doing their own thing during the year within what they're working on, it's like everybody kind of comes together and they revisit each other, and it's really nice. And I've met so many wonderful people, including yourself.
Oh, thank you.
And
And I must say, in my 2 months, I've had so many interesting conversations with lovely people. So yes, no, I understand. I understand what you're saying, and I think let's make a deal here. Okay, so this Grammy Awards, hopefully we have to be there, but regardless, I intend to be there. I'd like to say hello to a lot of people, that I've had the pleasure of interacting with. So let's catch each other in LA.
that sounds good.
Awesome. Good to hear. Okay, so I mean, we've talked about your work with the producer in 2001, some of your early work, and Aquarius Rising, of course, your latest offering. And there was, I think, another one called Kundalini Rising.
Yes.
Is that right? So
Yes.
what is your interest in this sort of healing music, meditative music, calming music? I'm just trying to sort of capture the area. How did you get interested in this form or genre of music? Genre is a limiting word, but let's say the style of music.
I always wanted to do something positive within my talent. And I started researching when I was a junior in high school for my junior thesis. And it was for English class, and I started conducting experiments within sound healing for that. And I learned so much about it that I was like, okay, this is where, like, I know that there's a difference between music and what it does to a person, or what it does to their nervous system, or you have the healing aspect of it, and you have the opposite, where certain types of music, it has the opposite effect. And I was like, well, I'm here on this planet to make some kind of difference in this world, so I want to use my talent for something that is going to benefit people around me.
Yeah.
And so I started investigating, and I was doing a lot of research with it. And Kundalini Rising was my first sound healing album that I did. And I was out in LA, and my mom had come to visit, and there was a lady that was staying at the hotel that she got into, I think it was a car accident. And no, she had something that happened. I don't know if it was a stroke or something. There was something that happened, and she lost a lot of her brain functions. And so she ended up going to a lot of medical doctors, and there wasn't really anything that they could do for her. And she found out about sound healing, and she went over to the Harvard Medical Center, like the sound healing center. And she was able to see how the state that the music puts you in is perfect for healing. And so she was talking to my mom, and then we gave her a copy of Kundalini Rising, and then she got back to us the next day, and she was like, "This is probably the most powerful album that I have used.
Mm.
And she said, I'm gonna take it over to the Harvard Sound Healing Clinic so that they could do some research with it. And so I ended up working with them. That's how that door opened over there.
You're right.
And then I I did several other sound healing projects
Mm.
that was that were that was released, after that. And it's just I've it's just who I am. I just
Mm.
am
Mm.
somebody that just wants to make a difference within the
Yeah.
talent that I have.
Yeah. I can see that. It comes across very very genuinely and very authentically in your music and in your words as well. So I really like that. It resonates well with me because I've struggled with purpose a lot, around clarity of why am I here? What am I meant to, why am I on planet Earth for? These certain natural qualities or skills that the universe has been kind enough to give. I didn't value it for a very long time. I didn't even value my voice. Initially I would always think, oh, I wish I had, more, whatever, more of whatever I didn't have. And then I realized that it was some of my natural strengths, some of my natural gifts are there for a reason. And I'm on this planet for a certain reason. And I want to, whatever I do in my life, I want to be aligned with my nature. And this was a very recent thing. It was January 2022 when I was for the first time able to clearly articulate my purpose, which is to spread joy and inspiration to all like-minded people. And I achieved this purpose using different ways. So, I wear many hats. So as a singer, songwriter, musician, performer, then there's writing. I mean, I'm a published novelist. Two of my novels have done really well. So through storytelling, through writing, and through cooking, through whatever, I'm able to spread joy and inspiration. And that moment when my purpose became, when I developed clarity around purpose and my reason for being, it really, through that purpose, I was able to derive a lot more fulfillment than when everything was a bit hazy. I'm saying, I don't know where I'm going. So it really resonates with me. It brought meaning into my life. It, brought a sense of fulfillment. And from what my wife says, I'm more fun to be around. And so, so yeah, it completely resonates with me. And I'm on that journey. I'm trying for my music now to consistently reflect that ability to. So I speak. So that's the other thing I do. So my primary hat that I wear is as a speaker, as an inspirational speaker. I find great joy in inspiring people and coaching people and helping them on their journey. And this podcast is also part of that whole thing. And recently, and I have an interest in poetry. So recently at TEDx, so I managed to tick a box last year. I did a TEDx talk. I was like, yeah, that's good for my brand. But that whole talk was actually a performed poetry. I didn't, there was hardly any talk. It was pure poetry and a narration from one of my books. And one of my poems, which I'll share with you after after this podcast, is called "What Makes You You." And I think you'll like the spirit of that poem. It talks about very much about why you're on this planet. And if you're a river, you flow. If you are, a lion, you roar. If you're an eagle, you soar. And so that's a kind of, play to your strengths. Do what nature
Right.
has given you. So don't fight it. Anyway, but no, I'll share that with you. Hopefully you'll resonate with it as well.
I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, great work. Okay, so and this journey, this tryst with music, started when you were 3. Is that correct?
It started before.
Wow, before 3.
So
I don't even remember what I was doing.
so my mom, when I first started crawling, I would always go over, like, my mom would turn on the radio and she would play records. And I, I think it was Peter and the Wolf. I think she said that was my favorite. I would always crawl over
Yeah,
to the stereo and I would put my ear
yeah.
to the stereo. This was before I could walk. I
Yeah.
was just crawling. And but because I couldn't talk, she
Yeah.
didn't know what was going on. She had thought maybe something was wrong with my hearing,
Yeah.
but I was just getting closer so I could hear just like more of that stereo sound. And
Hearing was just fine.
like my hearing was fine. And
Yeah.
so when I was three, I or two or three, I started begging my mom for piano lessons. And you know, she didn't know if I was serious, but I was so young. And she was like, okay, so like after months of me doing that, she was like, okay, well, here's a jar. If you can fill this with, you know, money or whatever, you can help pay for the piano bench. And then, you know, I will know that you're serious with this. And I ended up going to my neighbors and just doing little chores. I would rake leaves, or I would, if like they knew what I was trying to do. But but I I did that for several months, and on my fourth birthday, my grandparents gave me like a little bit of money for my birthday, and at that point I had enough for my lessons.
Wow, you were handling and spending money and for knowing what you wanted. Gosh, that's a lot of clarity.
But the teacher, was I three or four, or was I two or three? I don't know. I always get the story messed up. It's either
Yeah.
between two and three or three and four. I
Yeah.
I, it could have been on my fourth birthday that I started lessons, uh, but the teacher wouldn't take me because she didn't, like, he didn't know,
Mm.
like, he was like, I can't do this. And
Mm.
so my mom actually started taking lessons,
Mm.
and then she would teach me what
Mm.
she had learned. And then one day I was practicing, and the teacher was coming because it was the time for my mom's lesson. And my mom opened the door, and the teacher was like, that's really awesome. And she was like, that wasn't me, that was Phil. And at that point, he took me on as a student. And then
Wow.
that's how I started within those lessons. But a part of me knew from probably day one that I
Mm.
wanted to do something within this.
Mm. Mm. So cool. Such a cool story. Anyway, so you grow up and at some point you meet vocalist whose name is Holly Fisher, your partner. And so tell us about that. What drew you to each other with music? I'm sure music played a role. And what is it like, being living with a musician? What's that like? What are some of the pros and dare I say cons, if any?
Well, since we're on the same wavelength,
Mm,
it's a lot easier since we're on the same wavelength and we're both musicians. We
mm,
both started this label
mm,
back in 2001,
mm,
and we've been working together
mm,
ever since. I taught her how to engineer, so a lot of times
mm,
when I'm recording piano,
mm,
she'll engineer me. That way, I'm not having to go back and forth
mm.
to the software, because it kind of breaks you
Yeah,
from
yeah.
that flow. So I taught her how to engineer, and she writes lyrics, she sings, and we have worked together since basically day one. I was looking for somebody who could sing a
Mm,
chant that I
mm,
had written, and we were at a gathering, and she sang something, and I knew that her voice was going to be good for
mm.
for that piece. And then that's how we started. working together, and then we've been together ever since then.
Fantastic.
So
That's such a beautiful story. So no, good. So I mean, I wish you for many more
and
collaborations.
we still work together.
Nice work,
So
nice work. No, good. I look forward to a lot of your collaborations and projects. Hitting the stores in the near future. So well done to both of you. And the reason I ask is because I'm a musician and a creative person, and my wife's the complete opposite. And in our case, that's what keeps things okay. Because but fascinating, very fascinating. All right, okay. Phil, I mean, we could keep going. We could keep chatting about so many things. I'm sure we have a lot of common interests, which I'll hopefully, if you stick around, we'll have a little offline banter as well after this. But it does sort of bring us to the very last question, of the podcast. And as you know, the question, and I'd love to know your answer. I must say, I have an inkling of what you might say, but I won't. But I'll tell you later. So the question is, as you know, according to Phil, what is the one must-have or one non-negotiable for someone to be the next big thing in any field? But you can talk music.
in any field,
But we can limit it to music if that's what your preference is.
what I would say is you really have to have integrity, and especially within yourself, within what you are here to do, or just doing the right thing.
Mm.
And whether it be music, or something in the medical field, or something, and like you're always going to have challenges, but um you you have to be having just that inner connection within yourself, and people know when things are okay and when they're not, or if you're not doing things appropriately, or not, and the truth always has a way of coming out. And you know that that's part of why I turned down the deal that I was
Mm.
offered in
Mm.
in college. It didn't fit me. It didn't fit me, and what the label was going to try to turn me into. And I didn't like that. And I didn't want to be that person, and
Yeah.
I didn't want to go down that road.
Yeah.
So it's just it's so much better, because at the end we all just want to have a positive experience in life together.
Mm.
And I would say
So,
integrity. I would say
yep.
integrity,
Yes,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
always learn, and always expand.
Yeah. Integrity and an appetite to learn and willingness to learn.
You're
So no,
either
it's great.
expanding, one more
Mm.
thing, you're either expanding or constricting. You
Mm.
never stay the same. So you
Mm.
always want to expand.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Fascinating. It prevents us from being stagnant and
Yeah.
complacent, and yeah. Wonderful. No, so it really works for me. And I'm reflecting on this 20-something-year-old's clarity, when you turn down this big record deal. And a lot of us wouldn't have done that. And I mean, I sort of had that same opportunity. But at that time, I must say, I didn't have that clarity of who I was. I was still sort of finding who I was. And then later, I thought the answer to who am I was X, and I didn't like X. I wasn't comfortable with X. And then I realized that whatever it was, X, Y, Z, whatever it was me, and I'm going to own it. And that process took a long time for me. Like it took me all the way until, very late 30s. And then when I realized, who I was, and I was comfortable with it, then, I went going, this is me. This is my music. This is me in my full glory. I'm not going to hide myself. Take it or leave it. So, but it took me a long time. So I'm just amazed that you had that clarity and that balance to be able to take good strategic decisions at an early age. So very, very impressive.
Thank you.
All right. Now, thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing your time and integrity, willingness to learn, and so many other wonderful lessons to learn from Phil's story. So thank you again for doing this podcast. Much appreciated.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure.